Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. So the other day I shot the video on how to sharpen my Victorinox Tinker Swiss Army knife, and I talked too much. So we just got through sharpening the big blade. So what I want to do today is go through sharpening the little blade. Now the little blade has got some differences here. So if you look, there it is. Alright, so if you look at the one that I'm carrying right now, you can see that, and this is a brand new one, you look at the profiles. Yeah, I'll get you a little bit closer for that one. See how I reprofiled this one? Flattened it out to where you got a much pointier point, kind of like a Warncliffe style, and then tapered the blade also, instead of, just slimmed it out and refined the point quite a bit. Now, when I did this one, and you might be able to see it like this way. Okay, so mine's on the left, or the one I'm carrying right now is on the left, the reprofiled one. And you can see that it's quite a bit thinner. Okay, so all knife blades, well, pretty much all knife blades, they're not just flat stock from here to here with an edge put on. There's a grind. So they taper from the spine to the edge, and then you sharpen them. Okay, so when you do any reprofiling, like I did on this one, if I was to just grind that back, and reprofile it, and then not grind the sides this way, then the edge would be really, really thick by the time you got down there. So all knives, as you sharpen them and use them, they will get thicker and thicker as you get towards the spine. A lot of folks don't view a knife as a disposable type tool, a tool that can be used up. But it's kind of like a number 2 pencil. Okay, so you take a number 2 pencil, you sharpen it. Okay, you put a point on it, and then you wear that point away through writing, and then when you go to resharpen it, you have to remove all the wood from here back to be able to expose a fresh point. Well, the same thing happens with a knife blade. So knife blades will get used up over the years. The more you use them, the faster you're going to wear them out. So I told you I like using this knife more as like a utility type tool, right? So I carry it every day. The large blade gets an awful lot of abuse that isn't related to prying or chopping or anything like that. So, so a knife like this blade right here, and when I say abuse, I'll beat it up like scraping gaskets, cutting wire, pretty much anything that, honestly, if I know that I'm going to wreck an edge doing something and this knife will take care of it, this is a $20 knife or maybe $30 knife, something like this. So I would much rather wreck an edge using this than, my Benchmade 940, soon to be one of my custom Axis style locks. Because it's just an awful lot cheaper to replace a $20 knife than it is to replace, I think these are $150, $200, something like that. And then by the time I make a new blade for it and everything, I've got an awful lot of time into it. So anyway, so the large blade gets, I think the example I used the other day was I used this to replace the window pane in a broken window pane in a wood window. Now the little bitty knife, what I use it for the most is whittling. So if I wanted to make like this one right here, I either never finished or didn't like the way that it turned out. But this is, I call it a Santa pencil. It was, I saw it in a wood carving magazine, and when my boy was in grade school, I would whittle one of these for every kid in his class for Christmas. And then I'd usually make a couple of dozen extra and give them to the principal so that she can give them out to, kids that were having a rough day, or, she could use them to like give a kid an attaboy or an attagirl, for a job done well or something like that. And they were a really big hit. So you know, I'll use that small blade that's been reprofiled for an awful lot of whittling. Also like detail work, so like you know, cutting a coupon out of a newspaper or something like that. That reprofiled tip really does a good job on that. Anytime I want a small blade like this for, so like yesterday I swapped out the fuel pump in my truck, and it came with a new electrical connector. So I clipped the wires and then just, you know, strip the ends of the wire off with this. And you can kind of feel it's got a couple little burrs on it. So when I reprofiled this, and then when I went back and reground the primary grind, this steel is quite a bit softer than the steel that I normally work with, and it won't support as fine of an edge as like my 1095 or my 440C stainless. So when I reground it, I was grinding probably some paring knives or something, and I pulled this out, reprofiled it, reground it. Took all of about 10 minutes or so, but you know, in my head I was grinding it to, you know, a nice thin edge, and I ground it a little bit too thin. This soft steel won't support, you know, the same type of edge that my 1095 will. So anyway, so it's pretty dang thin, you know, and that's okay. I mean, as I did this probably a year or two ago, something like that. So as I use it, you know, that edge thickens up a little bit, and it's getting pretty close to being right where it needs to be. So when we sharpen this, since it is so thin, we won't have to reshape the edge so much, because there's not really, the edge bevels aren't very wide. All right, so what I'm going to do with this one today is, first let's talk about the burr. Okay, I tell you, the easiest way to sharpen, or at least the way that I like to tell folks to sharpen, is to get the burr. All right, so my last video I showed you on the GoPro with the little 10x lens what the burr looked like. Well, it just so happened that day before yesterday, I've been doing awful lot of car work lately, getting ready for wintertime to come in. I was replacing the ball joints on the driver's side on my wife's truck, and I ended up making a tool to, anyway. So here's an old chainsaw file, and I had made a punch to be able to drive a cotter pin out from the, you know, the inside. So all it is a tapered punch, and you push it through this, and then that'll kind of pull the cotter pin out. But when I did that, I bent it over. I think you can see it right here. See how it's bent over like that? Well, that looks an awful lot like a very, very large version of the burr that you're feeling for when you sharpen a knife. Okay, so just imagine if this was an edge and the very tip of it got bent over. That's what happens on your cutting edge on your knife. So when you feel for that burr, if you feel for it this way, you won't feel anything. You feel for it this way, and boy, you feel something right off the bat. That's what you're feeling for when you check for a burr. So on this side, I feel a little bit of a burr right here, and I don't feel any towards the tip. But you swap hands over here, and I don't feel a burr back here, but right up towards the point, I feel a little bit of a burr there. That is what you're feeling for, is that burr. Okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and establish the burr on one side, establish the burr on the other side, then weaken the burr, and then once the burr is nice and weak, we'll go ahead and remove the burr. What I'm going to be using is a DMT. Get the screen to pop back up. There we go. We're going to be using a DMT continuous surface. They make these in the interrupted surface. This is a Smith's, but you know, the interrupted surface, I believe the DMT's, their course is blue. It's a 325 grit surface. Okay. But the little, you know, there's no interruptions in there. So, and that'll be plenty for this particular knife. So, put the blade to where you feel the edge or the blade bevels. Raise it up just slightly until you feel the edge bevel, and then just bring it towards you. And like I said, this is a very thin knife, or very thin blade now that I've reground it, so it won't take very many. And bam, all of a sudden I can feel that burr. I guess you're this way. Now I can feel that burr up in here all the way along to the point. It's a little bit light at the point, so we'll give it a couple more strokes. Now I can feel the burr from the sharpening notch all the way to the point. Now we go the other way. Lay the knife down flat on the blade bevels, raise it up just slightly until you feel the edge bevel, and then again the other way. That first stroke will feel a little bit gritty because you're shearing that burr off. A couple of strokes, and now I can feel that burr all the way up. Now the point right here and back here needs a little bit of work, so we'll just go ahead and do a couple more. Again, this is, we're kind of shaping the edge and sharpening at the same time, but because this is a very thin grind on this blade, we don't have to remove a whole lot of material, so we're just going straight to my finishing stone. Now these strokes right here, again, that first couple of strokes will feel a little bit gritty because that burr is contacting the stone. So we move the burr over to the original side. We move it back over. Now while I'm doing this part right here, I'm really lightening up on my pressure. Okay, so now I can feel that burr is weakened considerably. And how I can tell that the burr is weakened is because it feels much finer. Okay, so if we were to look again at our chainsaw file taper punch here, it would be like this point, instead of being bent way over. Let's see if maybe I can bend it back a little bit right quick. It would be like that. I mean, without the little kink in there. So you would feel an awful lot less of it. Okay? So we'll do a couple of light, very, very light strokes, alternating directions, just to continue weakening up that burr. You want to get the burr to where it's just barely hanging on there. Okay? So now I can barely feel that that burr is hanging on. Then what I want to do, go back to feeling the blade bevels. There's the sharpening bevels. We're going to go about twice the angle that we shape the edge on, so about like that, and very, very lightly shear that burr off. Now see, I felt what's left of it move to the other side. Same way on that one. I can feel just a slight amount that got moved again. And usually, it kind of depends on the steel a little bit. Harder steels with better grain structure will typically shear the burr off cleaner than a softer steel will. That burr will kind of want to hang on a little bit longer with softer steels. A little bit more there. There we go, the burr's completely gone. Let's see if you can see again. No, how about right about there? And we should be popping hairs off. There we go. We're popping some hairs. Now, to check for an edge that still might have a little bit of burr, what you can do is when you do the whole arm hair shaving test here, That should be about right. If you can shave in this direction, but not in this direction, then that means you have a little bit of a burr still hanging on there. And then it just takes another stroke or two to take the rest of that burr off. So anyway, so like I said, on the on these particular knives, actually most knives that have got two blades like this, whether it be the Tinker or oh, here's one that I just actually finished up the other day, and I left. Somehow when I put it together, everything looked good beforehand, but when I finished it up, the spring is a little bit proud on the small blade side. So since this was the first one that I made with the stabilized cottonwood, I just decided to go ahead and throw it in my pocket and make it a long-term tester. But you know, so it's got a large blade and a small blade. So, and it's got pocket lint and dust and all that kind of stuff on it too. So a knife like this, I would do the same setup. You know, I would put a normal edge angle on the large blade, because it's going to see the most abuse, really. You know, I mean, because it's the larger knife, or the larger blade. And then the smaller blade, I'm going to put a you know, a much finer edge angle on it, so that it you know, so that it works better for detail work. But anyway, so pretty much any blade or any knife that's got, you know, two or more blades, that's the type, that's how I'm going to sharpen the small blade in relation to the large blade. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Again, get to sharpening. You know, the biggest thing that will make your experience with a particular knife, whether it's a Swiss Army knife, whether it's a large type folder, kitchen knives, a neck knife, anything, you know, your sharpening ability is going to be what makes that knife perform or not perform after you know, use up the initial edge that was on there when you got the knife. So get to sharpening, get to practicing. Sharpening is very, very simple. Just remember, you got to get the burr, you got to weaken the burr. Well, first, okay, you shape the edge, then you get the burr, then you weaken the burr, then you remove the burr, and then you test to make sure the burr is gone, and you're good to go. If something is sharper when you're done sharpening it than what it was when you started, then you are doing a good job of sharpening. Anyway, again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.